Hi, welcome to Thursdays with Culture Talk. I'm Cynthia Forstman. We gave Teresa the week off. She's actually off doing some hiking out west. And I have with me one of our Culture Talk partners that I'm excited to introduce today, Mark Godfrey. Say hello, Mark.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, and where are you located, Mark?
So my company is Parker Madison, and we're in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Perfect. And Mark's company is actually one of the first groups that came through our Culture Talk certification program. Believe it or not, it was back in 2017.
Mm.
And what Parker Madison does is actually transform brands by doing an inside out approach and really looking at the underlying culture and purpose as a way to represent the brand. Mark, anything to add to that?
No, it's really interesting because we do this archetypal profile and things for our clients all the time. But to turn that around and do that on ourselves was a really interesting experience.
It always is.
Mhm.
Mark and I were talking over the past 2 weeks because we have been running a little team building workshop with his team at Parker Madison, having each of the employees look at their own archetypes and introduce themselves to each other through the lens of their archetypes. And Mark did that on a call last Friday, and he came up with something that I just was like, so I loved the way you profiled your archetypes. Um, One of the things I love about archetypes is that there's so many different ways to understand ourselves and kind of the way we are through these storylines. And as many years as I've been working with archetypes, there's always like someone always has a new twist. And so I invited Mark today to share with us a little bit about how he profiled himself through archetypes because there's an interesting twist. So, Mark, I'll let you take it away and talk about your patterns.
Well, my archetypal profile came back, and I've known this for years, and I never really thought that deeply about it until we decided to really look at it closely. And my top archetype is hero. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, hero. Right after that, tied for second, are creator and explorer. And I thought those I kind of like that. I see those two in kind of my life and things. And the fourth was, or kind of the third, really, is the magician.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, that's pretty neat because that's kind of what I like to do when you look at the magician archetype. But I kind of went back to it and said, why hero? Why is that the top one? It can't just be because I'm handsome. There's
Could
more
be.
to it than that. And
Mhm.
I started thinking about some of the questions, and I thought, well, I answered some of those questions like my life, like even in from college. You pull an all-nighter, you're not afraid to sacrifice a weekend or work through lunch or things like that. All that, whatever it takes kind of attitude is really about the hero. So that's probably where that shows up.
And maybe as an agency owner too, Mark, in a customer delivery business, a lot of hero.
Sure. I mean, we wear a lot of hats and we're willing to do whatever it takes to pitch in and get that job done. And of course, we have a lot of deadlines that we're dealing with. So a lot of times we're operating in crisis mode, and that's where the hero kind of comes in.
Mm.
And but that's not necessarily where I want to stay for the rest of my life. Maybe when I was younger, that was okay, but now I'm just not as effective. And you kind of get burned out. You kind of feel like I can't do this for that much longer. Not
Mm.
to mention the fact that I've got people that work for me now that have more talent and more energy than I ever had.
Mm.
So it's really not the best role for me. So even though that might be my archetypal top profile, top archetype, I don't think it's really for the future. And
Yeah.
so I started looking at some of those others. And in our business, we're always looking for patterns and overlapping patterns. So, like, you ever remember those 3D movies when we used to go and we'd put on those glasses and it would have a red lens and a blue lens.
Yep.
And if you just look through one lens, you see one thing. If you look through the other lens, you see something else. But if you look through both lenses at the same time, you kind of see things completely differently. Things take on more dimension. And I think that's true with a lot of patterns. And so I started looking at this, and when I saw hero, and I saw that showed up kind of in crisis mode, it reminded me of Stephen Covey's time management matrix.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, where does that fit in there, and how do those other archetypes, how might they fit in there? So if I can share my screen here, I'll show you.
Yeah, I'd love for you too.
Okay. So I don't know if people are familiar with this, but this is the Stephen Covey time management matrix. And so he divides things based on their importance and their urgency. So of course, on the left over here, we've got important. Down here, we've got not important. Up here, we've got urgent, and here's not urgent. So where these overlap, important and urgent, this quadrant is the crisis quadrant. That's where you just have to do this and get through it. And that's where the hero probably showed up. This quadrant is not important, but it's urgent. So we find ourselves doing those things all the time. Maybe strategically in the long term, this isn't that important, but it's something that has to get done right now.
Mhm.
So he says those are the things you want to delegate. To me, that might be something you just have to figure out a good system for or a way to work around that, possibly. Um, Over here, we've got not important and not urgent. And up here, we've got important, but not urgent. And so as I started to apply these archetypes to that, I realized that hero goes up here. This is the crisis quadrant. That's where hero goes. Creator is here because it's not important in the long term, but you still have to get it done. And so you have to find a creative way to do that. Maybe that's delegated, but maybe it's just come up with a system, or maybe you just got to get real creative and get it done, get through it. So
Mm.
that's where I think creator goes. Um, this is the quadrant that Stephen Covey would say you have to eliminate because it's not important, it's not urgent. He calls these time wasters. And I disagree. I think that's where the explorer comes in. When I think about explorer, I think about somebody hiking over a mountain. And maybe you know what the right path is to take. But maybe there's a path over there that you think, I wonder where that goes. And to me, the explorer isn't afraid to try that. And maybe that path goes nowhere. But maybe that path is a shortcut. Or maybe that path takes you by something magnificent or beautiful or something that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. So I think there's a real reason to do things that aren't urgent and aren't important, but it does kind of expose you to other things you might not have seen.
Right.
And then I think in this last quadrant, that's where you really want to be. This is the planning quadrant. This is for the long term. These are things that are important, but they're not urgent. And a lot of times they're things we don't pay attention to because we're so busy operating in crisis mode. So to me, the magician shows up and he is able to convey that. He's able to inspire people and he's able to tell people, look, I found another way. I found a faster way to do this, something better than the status quo or something that's going to fulfill your life a little bit more. And to me, that's what the magician does. He
Mhm.
gets in there and he exposes and inspires other people in that. But he couldn't have done that without the explorer going out and finding these things. So
Ah,
that's kind of how I saw those two patterns kind of overlapping. And when I saw that, it really helped me see me and my future and kind of life in a whole new way, just like those 3D glasses do.
yeah.
And to me, the difference between thinking and knowing is small, but the
Mm,
difference between knowing and understanding is enormous.
mm,
And when I combine those two patterns, I feel like I have a much better understanding now. But that
mm.
never would have been possible without the archetypes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing yourself and thanks for sharing this idea. I heard you present, and then it made me want to take kind of my top patterns and see where they fit in that model as well. And so, just another example for our listeners and our audience about how do you take archetypes as patterns to understand yourself to and internalize that understanding of yourself. So, Mark, I thought it was brilliant, and as I said to you last week, I find in seeing you as an explorer and a creator that's kind of how you create magic as well. So thank you so much for being part of this. And for the rest of you, we'll see you next week. We love talking culture with you.
Thanks, Cynthia.